right, 7 o'clock, let's go.
I started the recording, so we are
Okay.
recording.
All right, I will call the meeting to order, 7 o'clock, roll call. Commissioner Montgomery, Commissioner Castaneda, Vice Chair Castaneda.
Here.
Commissioner Bussing. Here. Commissioner Marino is absent, Commissioner Juan is absent, and I am sad to report that Commissioner Lale has left the City of Davis as her residence, so she is no longer a commissioner. So we are down to 5, which is our appointed number.
Yes.
Okay. I have no council liaisons here. I will take a motion. You guys are doing a lot of work again today. I will take a motion for approval of the agenda.
I motion.
Commissioner Bussing moves. Commissioner Castaneda seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any brief announcements from staff commissioners or council liaisons?
Maybe just a couple things.
Sure.
One, as you mentioned, unfortunately, Commissioner Lale informed me over the weekend that she had just turned in her keys. They were moving to Sacramento, so was no longer able to serve on our commission, which is too bad for us. But we certainly appreciate her service, and we'll send her a appreciation. I guess
Certificate?
certificate of appreciation. Yes, and yeah, so she gives her farewell, I guess, to us. But also, at the previous meeting, I brought to you the Davis Community Church admin building, the window changes. I followed up with the request that the commission had and tried to work with the applicant, but when they did look into it more, it turned out that it was still very expensive, and so it ended up not being feasible, unfortunately. So they're kind of moving forward with what we reviewed then. So that we've done the noticing for that. I received no comments, so we should be able to approve it administratively. I also reported the landscape concerns that the Hattie Weber Museum had to parks and to forestry. I didn't hear back from them. I'd have to follow up to see if they were doing anything. But they may have been moving forward with some change. But I don't know if they are or not to address it. And beyond that, I've had some communication with a couple of residents from College Park. I think some of the residents are interested in doing like adding a bench or a sign or just some improvements of their own kind of to the area, but to also stay certainly within the historic sort of parameters, but nothing specifically historic, just things they would like to do around the neighborhood. We don't have anything specific yet, but they were just asking the city what the process would be for that type of thing. I don't think it would necessarily have to come to you because there was a bench, maybe there was some identification sign, but if there is something, we would certainly bring it to you. I think that is all I have for communication items. And then we have some staff members here who will present the items that are on our agenda tonight. So with that, I have no.
Okay. Speaking of College Park, is there any movement on the district management plan that was submitted several years ago?
There
to the
hasn't
city?
been, so I apologize. I know that's probably the priority for the work that you've done in the past and trying to follow up with that. So, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit when the agenda item question comes up, or the input on from the commission on setting items on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We will move on to public comment. Any public comment on matters not listed on the agenda or on the consent calendar, which is only our minutes from last meeting? Public comment? Okay. Consent calendar. We have our Historic Resources Management Commission minutes from August 19th. I will take one motion to approve. Anyone?
I'll motion to approve.
Commissioner Castaneda wasn't here.
Yes, well, I don't know.
You can just accept
I
them.
think I would.
Okay, we will accept them. Thank you. I assume there was no comments on them. Okay, great, thank you. And then regular items, moving on number 6, to our museum report. I don't think we have a museum report today, but we had a lengthy one last month. And it is still on my mind that they are seeking a WPA plaque for their building, which would need some funding. So I get those emails about grants and all sorts of historic preservation funding from the state office, so I've been keeping my eye out for that, but if anyone else happens to, I know they would be appreciative of trying to find some money for their plaque. Okay, regular item 6B, 4823 Childs Road, Cindy's Restaurant, Historical Resource Analysis, Planning Application number 2424. Okay, this I will let Eric take away or pass on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Actually, tonight we have Thomas McNairn, our Associate Planner, presenting the item, and then some members in the public from the applicant side who would like to speak afterwards.
Okay.
So take it away, Thomas.
Hello, Commissioners. Good evening. Thomas McNairn, Associate Planner from the city. It's nice to meet you all for the first time, actually. So tonight in front of you, there's the demo or the project for the demolition of the Cindy's Restaurant located at 4823 Childs Road. Demolition is part of a larger project that proposed the demolition of the Cindy's and then a construction of a Chipotle Lane project, which would be kind of a first of its kind in Davis, with some other site improvements, similar use. And that entitlement will end up going to the Planning Commission. But tonight, the matter at hand is to review the 51-year-old building that brings the matter to you all. The applicants, as a part of the project entitlement, had the building reviewed by a historian. And the historian's conclusion was that the Cindy's building is actually not eligible under the City of Davis's code. The findings for that conclusion was that though the building has a unique roof line with a hat-like roof structure, found that it's not an important example of the Gucci architecture as found in similar roadside diner architecture, similar buildings of the like from the era. And it's also a chain restaurant, and specifically in Davis it's not tied to any specific people or historical events either. So we also, I guess, received some public comments that you all have seen on the matter both prior to this weekend and also recently as of today. That sheds light on the matter, but what we are asking you to do tonight is to review the historical resources analysis in DPR 523, which is attached in your packet, prepared for the 4823 Childs Road for adequacy and find it acceptable for inclusion in the city's cultural resource inventory, and also find that the building does not meet the eligibility criteria to be considered for the historical designation pursuant to the historical resources analysis. I'm also here for any questions that need to be answered. Thank you.
Okay, so we will open our public hearing on this matter, and I will take public comments first. Anyone?
Well, I can go first. Good evening, my name is Dennis Fenwick, I'm an architectural historian, and I was hired by this gentleman to perform the historical analysis of Cindy's Restaurant. So I'll just kind of briefly go through the analysis and some of the high points and how I ended up with my recommendation. First thing, I think it's important to point out that Cindy's Restaurant is located in an area that was annexed to the city in the late 1960s. So that was on the outskirts of the core Davis downtown, certainly the core Davis area, historic area of the university. And its evolution or its development was in concert with improvements on Interstate 80 and the overpass that was built on Mace, and also the development that was going on in Mace. It is part of a chain, but not a very successful chain, is my understanding. There weren't that many Cindy's built. And they started either in the late 1960s or the 1970s. The corporate office was in San Jose. And I know its original Cindy's in San Jose was demolished recently. So I don't know if the city made a determination that it was not significant. In either case, it no longer exists. There are other Cindy's that still exist, and they have a similar architectural design. The restaurant remained in use, and then it changed in the 2000s in terms of cuisine. But ostensibly, there were some minor alterations that were done to the restaurant based on plans that were of the city. The owners were from basically the Bay Area. They were not local, and the architect was not local. He was hired from the Bay Area. It was a commercial enterprise, and the owners, as far as I know, did not own or operate any of the Cindy's restaurants that I can tell. Looking at the newspapers in California, and there are mentions of Cindy's, but I never found a lot of fanfare about it opening. It was not it didn't have a grand opening. It was more associated with the highway. I think that that was the concept behind it, as opposed to being in Davis, in a quarry of Davis, as opposed to being on the outskirts and along the freeway, I-80. So as far as association goes, I didn't find a strong associative significance, importance to the core city of Davis, to the university. I talked to some professors that I know that taught at Davis in the 80s, and they barely remembered Cindy's. I think if you talk to people that maybe lived around the Mesa neighborhoods, perhaps they do, because by the 80s, the development increased along Mesa, and families probably dined at Cindy's as they would at Denny's, as they would at Eppie's. So it kind of falls into that genre of restaurants, diners, chain, like Denny's, like an Eppie's. However, as far as its architecture, when I began to examine its design in terms of the broader spectrum of roadside architecture, Googie architecture is a phenomenon that basically sort of declined in the late 60s, as opposed to more of a mundane kind of, less cutting edge, space age, or avant-garde type of architecture that declined. So I looked at various restaurants, and I began to notice that the top hat, which is really the most distinctive feature of that building, was not something that was unique to that restaurant. Pizza Hut, and it was A&W, and there was probably 3 or 4 other restaurants that adopted that prior to Cindy's adopting that. As far as integrity goes, the restaurant has some minor alterations to the exterior that do not appear in the plans, but the interior looks pretty much intact. There's obviously changes to the kitchen, this and that. As far as the design of it, as far as Googie architecture goes, my conclusion was that it's not a good example of that form of architecture. As far as a chain restaurant, it's pretty typical of a lot of chains, but in this case, really a chain that was not all that successful, as far as what I can find in the literature and so forth. What else can I tell you? The only ones that I know that are in existence are in Orange County. There's one, and then there's one perhaps in the Central Valley, but that's about it. I can only find like 4 or 5 or 6 that were ever built. And like I said, it was kind of a franchise from my understanding with the corporate office in the San Jose area, but it didn't take off like a lot of the restaurants did. I mean, by the 1970s, there was numerous both fast food and diner restaurants that presented themselves throughout California. And this one, represents that, but doesn't, in my opinion, stand out as an important example of that period of architecture or that particular, the function, the relationship to Davis, its association. So that's my finding.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? Yes.
Sure. Thanks for that, Dana. My name is Jay Mundy, and I'm the owner of 4823 Childs Road. And first up, I wanted to thank the commission and all the members for holding this meeting. I do appreciate everyone's dedication and care that has been shown to address the concerns of the existing structure on the property and the efforts that have gone into exploring its historical significance. As someone that grew up in Davis, from grade school through UC Davis, I've witnessed the town's growth and transformation over the years. And I do believe that it's crucial that we make thoughtful decisions that serve the best interests of our community. And I share your commitment to ensuring a bright future for our city. My team and I, we did look at the remodeling the current structure. We looked at it very thoroughly, in fact, and found that it wasn't a prudent or cost-effective approach. And then additionally, the lessons of 2020 underscored the importance of having drive-through capabilities. And our decision was primarily driven by the need for something fresh, modern, forward-thinking, and healthy. And declining sales year over year further signaled that the community was ready for a change. And I want to express my gratitude to the planning department for its continued support and time. Thomas has been great to work with. It's been a great experience, but we're excited about the new project. And I believe it's a great fit for the south part of town and will serve our community well, while also attracting more visitors to Davis. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
My name's Robin Dabble, and I was on the commission about 35 years ago, a long time ago. 2 terms, a couple terms as chair. And I'm a retired academic from Sac State, a cultural geographer. And one of my specialties is historic preservation. And I have a different take on the significance of this building than the one we already heard. And I just want to share that with you. So let me just read the central paragraph of an email that I sent earlier. The path to avoiding demolition at this point appears to require that the Cindy's building be listed as a merit resource by the City of Davis. Here I want to push back on the judgment from the city's consultant that it does not meet the criteria for that listing. It is clearly Davis's best example of roadside Googie-ish architecture. So even if other purer examples survive in other cities, that should not be of as much importance or relevance as the building's unique contribution to Davis's cultural landscape. Moreover, while the consultant seems to argue that because it was peripheral to the traditional downtown and lacked connection to the town's major employer, UC Davis, that fact makes it less significant. But I would argue that actually that's part of its significance, that it helps to tell the story of automobility, freeway construction, suburbanization, and decentralization that were in fact the major forces that shaped American towns and cities after the Second World War. So it's part of a different chapter in the evolution of Davis's history. So in addition to having architectural significance for Davis, the building also has significance in the context of one of the most important events in the post-war history of Davis. Its transformation from a small, compact town into a much larger, lower density city that relied more and more on the automobile. That's the story that Cindy helps to tell from that part of town. It is not telling the story of Central Davis. So I don't think that undermines its significance. It just makes its significance different than what we might see in downtown Davis. So I would argue that it in fact meets criterion 1 about events, a big mega event in American history and landscape, and criterion 3, architectural style, specifically for Davis, right? Because we don't have a lot of Googie architecture in Davis. So I urge you to recognize Cindy's Restaurant at 4823 Childs Road as a Davis Merit Resource. Thank you.
Thank you. More public comment?
Okay, well, I really do thank our public commenters. I appreciate it, and I appreciated the emails and I think parts of our packet from other people. It's not often people read our packets and have opinions, so I appreciate it, because we do spend time volunteering here. for the betterment of the city. So I will now take comments and questions from commissioners to members of the public, staff, however you'd like to go. Anyone have anything to start with? Commissioner Massey, no? Okay. You don't have an archaeological question? I count on you for that. Any comments or thoughts on?
No, I mean, I think the record of the report is pretty clear. I don't necessarily think that there's any, as far as I can tell, Davis-specific reasons to preserve this, and the fact that it was demolished in San Jose is sort of interesting.
I think there was a fire in that building, I
Oh,
would
there was
say,
a fire,
so,
okay.
but yes. It was a fire and it's vacant, so. Thanks, I appreciated the report, I thought it was thorough. I do agree with the public commenter that perhaps when we think about historic Davis, we do need to sort of open our minds up to the larger context of how that Davis started to grow post its sort of compact town and small university city as it grew larger, and then we often have some thoughts about that as it moves forward. I mean, this is 51 years, so it just hits that cusp of, oh, it's time to think about these things, right? The early 70s are upon us, and it's building history in Davis. I do agree though with Dana that I don't think it is a particularly good example of Gigi architecture. Even if it is Davis's best example of it, I don't think it is a contribution that needs to stand the test of time for that preservation. So I did agree with that one there. So I would probably vote that it does not meet the eligibility criteria to be considered for historical designation. Do y'all want to discuss your thoughts on designation or vote? Vote. Voting is silence. All right, I will take a motion that we have reviewed the HRA and the DPR 523 for adequacy and find it acceptable for inclusion in the city's cultural resources inventory, and that we find the building does not meet the eligibility criteria to be considered for historical designation pursuant to the HRA. Do I have a motion for that? Commissioner Castaneda moves. I'll second. Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Did you abstain?
Sorry?
Did you abstain or vote?
I voted.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all. I appreciate it. Good luck at Planning Commission.
Thank you.
And I don't know that we have a plan commission scheduled yet, but we're looking at October.
I think October 9th was the idea, tentatively, depending on schedules and whatnot, so that's about it for now.
Thank you very much. All right, we will move on to 6C, to provide feedback to staff on proposed process on the council subcommittee to place task items on commission agendas. Okay. I guess staff is compiling feedback from all commissions and to share with the council subcommittee on commissions, the commission that would like us to disappear, but that's fine. Eric, would you like to share any feedback on this flow chart?
Actually, tonight I think Zoe is going
Okay.
to be talking about it. She's more familiar with it, so.
Thank you so much for having me. So I am actually here to represent the council subcommittee. This is a proposal that they wanted all of the commissions to see and to provide feedback. We're about halfway through the process, so we've got a couple commissions tonight, some more this week, and then I think we're gonna end with the remaining commissions next week. We have received a number of comments, questions, concerns. There is a slight change to the proposal that you're seeing from some of the other commissions, and it is mostly in the portion that's labeled commission-initiated requests. So the proposal is the same, but some of the clarifying questions that came up in some of the other commission's discussions, they tried to answer some of the questions. So it's the same proposal, just slightly different, kind of like boxes and the word just slightly different. But I'll go over that proposal now. So we have on the flow chart, we've got an A that is how council or a council subcommittee assigns a task to a commission. B is how staff brings items forward to a commission. And this is standard, this is current practice right now, which is put in writing that this is how these things happen. C is how a commission-initiated request, according to the proposal, how a commission could initiate a request and get it through a review process and on an agenda. And so the idea is a concept would be approved by the whole commission. So it wouldn't be just an individual, but be a whole commission wants to work on something. And then they would go through a review process. The review would either be with staff and the council liaison to the commission, which every commission has a regular and an alternate council liaison. Or if there is a subcommittee that is assigned to work on a particular thing, and that thing coincides with what the commission wants to work on, then that subcommittee would review it. So that's kind of what that review level would be. And then there would be a recommendation after that review. That review would look at things like, do we have the resources to do it? Is this in line with council priorities? Is this something that we have identified in one of our larger strategic plans that we've adopted, like the CAP, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan? We have a number of plans that have implementation that goes out for years. And so if it's something that's already identified, if it falls in line with that, then the chances are that it would get streamlined approval. If it's something that we have to go back and look at, is there a trade-off? Would staff be able to accomplish that with our existing time? Would it necessitate a consultant to come in and look at it? If it's a study, those are even more dollars. So that's the kind of review, and it could include just the staff and their department head, it could include the city manager, so it kind of depends on what the project is that's being proposed. So that's that review level. After that, the recommendation would come, and if, again, it falls in line with kind of all of those things that I just mentioned, then there would be recommendation for approval, and it would almost automatically go on the commission's agenda, or at least on the list of things that, when you have time, that you'd be working on. And then it would go to city council as more of an informational, that we got this request, it falls in line with all of these other things, and we think that this is something that should be agendized, and it's just informational to council. The other side is the not recommending approval, and then there's a couple different paths. The first would be that staff and the either the council liaison or the subcommittee would maybe think about if there are modifications to the proposal, or if maybe it could be taken in smaller pieces, like smaller phases, and they would come back to the commission with, we think that we have concerns about this, but what do you think about this? So that's kind of what that means. And then if the commission says, we like that idea, we think, yeah, let's go forward with that, then that kind of may go from do not recommend to recommend. If the commission says, no, we like our original proposal, we don't like any of these alternatives, then that would go to council. It would go to council with the recommendation to not approve by staff, but it would still go to council with the commission wants to proceed and here's why, and then staff has concerns and here's what they are. So that's kind of the explanation based on the flow chart. Again, this is a proposal that the subcommittee is looking for feedback on. Does this work? Does this not work? Do you have other ideas that you would like them to consider? Some of commissions are just giving us individual comments from their members. Some are taking a motion if there is consensus on the body about how they feel about this proposal. So we'll take any of your feedback that you'd like to give us. And I would, if I'm here to answer questions, if I'm able. I should say that we're going to all of the commissions in the month of September. And so the idea was they will go back to the subcommittee and they would think about it, chew on it. If they were going to come up with either a slightly revised proposal or bring something to council, it wouldn't be for a couple months. And if they get the feedback from commissions and they decide that this is something that they don't want to proceed with, or they want to do something entirely, so this might go quietly into the night. But regardless, we'll give the communication feedback back to the commissions as to what happened with this proposal. So I think that's all for now, but I'm here for questions.
Thank you, that was a very thorough explanation. I have a question on C, of course, the commission initiated request. What would be is there I would like to see a timeline associated with that. It seems like sometimes we send things out into the void, right? It's not
That's a good
preservation
question.
is not a huge, timely concern for a lot of the city council members. I get it. That said, we are a certified local government. We provide an essential function to some of the city's hearings, et cetera.
Right.
So I'm
I
just
think
curious
the
of the timeline of
idea-
this.
The idea was,
Like August meeting, we have this thing, we tell Eric, you take it there. Do we know by September? Is it December? People ignore it? I'm just curious.
so the idea was if we could get the answer to you at the very next meeting, that's the goal.
Okay,
If we can't get the answer, then we tell you, we have to look a little more deeply into it. We have things that we can't answer right now,
Yeah.
but we would at least give you that report out
yeah,
at your next meeting. So some of the things that a commission might come up with are brand new concepts, brand new technology, brand new whatever. So it might take a little bit of research to find out if this is something that we would want to, as staff, kind of say, we think this is something new, we don't necessarily have the resources for it, but it might be a good trade-off. We might want to not do this thing and do that instead. So sometimes that might take a little bit more analysis, but the idea is there would be open lines of communication, and you would know, even if there is more that needs to be done in the analysis, that you at least know that.
okay. And then would this apply to sort of existing things that we're working on? We don't come up with a lot of things on our own to work on. We really are more a reactive commission, but there have been things in the past that we have initiated and tried to move forward. The district management plan for College Park. When I first joined, there was a lot of extra surveys each individual member of the commission had to undertake for the city for free. I mean, there's a lot of things that we did. I'm just sort of thinking, like, we have an existing subcommittee that's looking at WPA markings. Like, would those things have to be halted and then get approved to move forward if this process?
I don't think that's actually been asked yet. That's a
Okay.
very good question. I could kind of come up with something I think would be reasonable, but I don't have an answer.
Okay. that would be
I
what
would
I'm-
hope that anything that is ongoing, we would at least have a check-in to say, we're this far, do we want to continue? I think that if it's something that's nearing completion, hopefully we would just really complete the project. If it's something that we're stalled for a reason, maybe we can look at what that reason is.
Okay.
And if it's resources, then again, we can go back and have that conversation about trade-offs and what is the priority. But ideally, we would not, it would be a dialogue.
It wouldn't be like a clean slate type
No,
situation.
no, no.
Okay.
No, that,
I mean,
and
we-
again, I don't
yeah.
have that in writing, but that was never the intent
Okay.
expressed when I was in, conversations with the subcommittee about their proposal. So, and this is just a proposal, so that is very welcome feedback that I'll take back and say that we need some clarification on the intent behind that.
Because I would imagine something like the management plan, the district management plan for College Park, that's been ongoing, you kind of had blessing already, there was the
Well, we used to have
$5,000, right.
Check-ins with the city council, like,
Oh,
every year, every other year, we kind of be like, here's what we're gonna do, and they'd say yes or no, and then we just sort of move on. This sort of takes the place of that in
And I
some way.
think that different councils over the years have approached how they communicate with their commissions differently.
Right.
And some have been more with really looking at work plans. Some have had joint meetings. Some have really involved liaisons for certain commissions, but not all. So I think the idea behind this was to have some consistency across our commissions. And so that everybody would kind of know that there is a process and that ideally, it would help all of us at the staff level, at the commission level, at the council level to kind of know what's going on in the world of commissions. But we do have any number of, when we've gone to commissions over the last year, we've had a lot of questions and concerns about commissions that feel they may be working on things that they don't know if council supports or not. or they want to feel like they are really, their time is valued.
Mhm.
And we've had the council really express interest in using commissions in a certain way with the upcoming general plan update. And so I think the idea is just trying to align all of these things that are going on in the city organization and with the commissions and the council, and hopefully we're all kind of working towards goals together, and where we identify priorities, you know, across the board. And we're not all gonna be doing the same things, but if we kind of understand that here's the universe,
Mhm.
here's our funding sources, here's our staff, you know, how do we do this thing together?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I monopolized the questions. Any others?
I think one question I have is, have other cities done this? I mean, I think this seems like a really clear, like, funneling into the council. So I'm curious if this is already common practice, or if this is.
I think what's more common is like the work plan idea, so it's a little bit more formal. We did some research with some other cities that they have, like the work plans are presented to council, and you have to kind of explain all of the, you know, like the funding that you might need, the amount of staff hours that you might need, and then council kind of goes through and they look at it maybe with their budget timing to see, you know, so different cities do it differently, but this is a little less formal than what we've seen with other commissions.
Thank you.
And this is ongoing, so it's not necessarily like, you know, a set time to do it during the year, or a set time during, you know, commissions.
Yeah, I think that,
Reviews.
I think that the idea, and we've had some discussion, certain council members have expressed interest in having like a regular item at every council meeting where they say, what's going on with our commissions? And other council members say, I don't know if we'd be able to accomplish that, should we do it quarterly? So there's still a lot of discussion about how often and what mechanism we would use to kind of communicate. I think this is a proposal, it's not the only thing that's being discussed. And it's not the only thing that the council subcommittee would consider if there were other ideas that would come from the commissions themselves.
Just to be clear, I want to make sure this is not like a circular concept, that we can't get something, a concept on a regular meeting agenda to approve amongst ourselves to take to the council because the council hasn't approved it to put on our agenda, right? Like there's a little bit of a circular reference error in there.
There is, and I think as staff, we kind of said, what does this actually mean? And we've kind of thought through, if it's like from one, let's say you have a regular item come to you, and then during your discussion on that regular item, you say, we would like to really understand something about XYZ. And you say, let's have a subcommittee, do some research, and come back to us about XYZ. And they come back in a meeting, or 2 meetings, or something like that. And really, it's just, okay, now that we understand this XYZ, do we want to do something about, you know, that? And yes, we want to look at, you name it, right? Revising, creating a policy, revising our current practice, whatever that might be. Once, I think you get to that stage.
Okay, so there's still some, like self-determination of what can go on the agenda.
And I think that's just when we were discussing it at the staff level. Because we were trying to say, okay, what does this actually, in reality, mean during a meeting?
For
How would we
example,
respond?
in
What
our
is this?
meetings, we would think of, I'll just pick Village Homes, because I know it's something we were gonna do, but Village Homes is reaching the 50-year-old mark. And so we have had a group of people look at and talk to Village Homes to see if they have interest in becoming a historic district. Before we go out and try to see if the city would spend money on it or get a grant, you know, we internally did that work. And you're saying that work could still be.
Internally as a commission.
As a commission, we could still self-organize in that way and say, we'd like to spend, you know, some of our time talking to Village Homes. Are you saying, no, to talk to Village Homes, you really need to ask the city if they're interested in Village Homes as a historic district?
I think that something like creating a new historic district might be a big task.
Mm-hmm.
I think a really good thing would be to create like criteria for creating historic districts, you know? So we have something that is a little more certain.
Mm-hmm.
So we say, once we have interest at this kind, or once we have this kind of a resource, or once we have, you know, I don't know if there's really good identified criteria to do that. That would make it a little bit more streamlined to get something kind of started, initiated. I know that something like a creating a new district, we've had people in a proposed district in the past kind of say, oh, we're not really interested in that district. So if we had some clarity on how far down the line, you know, so like,
So that's what we kind of did, we just sort of
Yeah.
talked to the Village Homes HOA and discovered that it had absolutely no interest in being historic whatsoever, and we're like, great, thanks, we're not gonna spend our time working on something that no one that lives there wants, right?
yeah, so I think that's something that we would have to get clarity on.
Like, okay,
I can't, I mean, I could kind of do the reasonable persons test
right,
as a staff person, but I would really need to get clarity on how does council interpret that.
that
And it might-
self-initiative sort of work.
Right,
And it might be that the HRMC is a little bit different body, a little bit different responsibilities than some other commissions, and so like you said, there are
Yeah.
projects that they've done or that they take a lead on because of the historic preservation program.
and
So
so,
it's a
like,
little
for
bit-
instance, planning commission is very application driven.
Mhm.
So it's not as germane to the work that they do. There are other commissions that they have annual things that staff has to report on.
Mhm.
And there are certain commissions that they're almost just, like there to kind of be a resource for the community.
Mhm.
Like if there's something happening
Mm.
in the community, like this is the place to go to talk about it.
Mhm.
And so not every commission is like apples to
Yeah, this
apples.
is
Yeah.
trying to be super generic, so it applies to everyone, and it's very difficult.
It's
Because
very
they all
difficult.
have different purviews and,
Yeah, so
The
ideally,
drink,
what
okay.
would come out of this is saying, oh, this may not apply for this type of a, you name it, this type of a project, this type of a commission, this type of a review, but maybe we could have something else that says, when these things come up, let's give it so many months, let's do these first initial contacts, you know, like whatever is reasonable, let's make a proposal, if the commission wants to make a proposal, does the
Okay.
council like this proposal,
okay.
you know, that kind of thing.
Thinking of it as a proposal was maybe helpful, that we would do some internal
Yeah.
conceptual work prior to coming up with a proposal to take.
And in fact, I think it would be very welcome if the commission has an idea of, you know, this may not fit us, but what would fit us? Like, that's very what we
Yeah,
need.
like we would never undertake that process without talking to
Yeah.
the city council, because even if Village Homes wanted to be an HOA, then be a historic district, we would still wanna make sure the city wanted them to be a historic district too, right? Like there would need to, everyone should move together on that.
There's
so-
surveys, there's a whole lot of effort behind, but you need the
It's-
information, you need some legwork to decide, is it even feasible, is it something
Yes,
interested
and
in?
to
is it
begin with, we
proposal?
needed a survey to even tell us that there were raisins in the raisin bread, as Rand used to say, like, that there is a historic district there, that they had contributing resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the WPA, or the
Yeah.
WPA markings, it's kind of similar to that, I think, too, where there's a little bit of
Yes.
legwork, but, you know, we're not anywhere you're not anywhere asking for the city for anything at this point, or
Right,
looking, but you're still trying to look at that feasibility and what
Yes.
can be done, but before you go too
Okay.
far, you'd probably get council approval.
that's helpful. I think maybe the word concept, I would think about replacing the word concept in here, because
What would you, do you
I'm
have
not
an
quite
idea?
sure, like, proposal, like something that is, because concept can be super conceptual, right? Like, it seems like a
Very true.
pre-idea versus a thing that the commission really wants to work on, like a proposed action or a plan.
It's almost like that word has to be specific to each commission.
Yeah.
Yes, and maybe that's,
Yeah.
maybe, like, yes, maybe it
Yeah.
should be, maybe there should be
And-
a
and
list of
maybe
words that go in there.
This is more of the
Yeah.
category of not your typical functions, but like if you have a new thing that you want to,
That's right, if
you
we're
know,
somehow
jump
like,
into.
we need a new historic preservation website for the city of Davis, like, that would be a concept we should probably run by the city council before we spend hours making a new website, right? So, yes, yeah, that's
but no,
maybe,
very, very good feedback, thank you.
If-
Thank you.
If they have other feedback, is Are you looking for just at this meeting, or can they
I'm
still
looking
provide
for,
some?
for anything. The idea was, this is not a continuing matter to be discussed at every commission meeting, but we know that we have very different, based on what the commission's scope is, you may have very busy agendas, that you're just very driven by applications, or you may have the time to actually be looking at newer technology, newer, you name it. And so I think we're just trying to gauge where these commissions lie, where the interest is, where the concerns are. And we're hearing all of that. We're hearing concerns, we're hearing confusion. And I think the idea now, we're just trying to say, if this doesn't work, what would work? And we're very welcome to any of that feedback. If you want to send those to me, if you think of something after this meeting, you can send them to me. The idea is we're just going to commissions this month, and then we're going to bring it back to the subcommittee. So it's not this ongoing, continuing thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that you won't see other proposals in the
Okay.
future that might be slightly different, slightly completely different, that kind of thing. So
But
we're
you would
just-
probably need it fairly soon to bring it back to the subcommittee.
This is
Yeah,
true,
just for
so
this
we
first-
have this
this one.
subcommittee that probably will not continue past, the next time they do appointments, which is usually like after an election. So this subcommittee will probably conclude their work by December, would be my guess. So this proposal will have an answer for relatively soon, within the next couple months. There might be different subcommittee formed next year when they're looking at doing recruitments, because we will have, our commissions have their terms, half of the terms for all commissions are up in July. So we will be doing recruitment all during the spring months. And so that's really a good time. They usually form a new subcommittee, and they may look at some other process things at that time. I don't know for sure, but that would be logical.
Okay. Well, sounds good. We appreciate you coming here and explaining it and having a chance to give feedback. Yeah, seems like a lot of work.
And I do think you have someone here that wants to make a public comment about this.
Yes, public comment.
Yes.
Commission, past process, please. Thank you.
My name is Elaine Roberts-Musser. As Dan Carson and I have pointed out, there is a move afoot by the City Council Subcommittee on Commissions of Mayor Chapman and Councilmember Vitla to micromanage and indefinitely block any commission-related proposal for any reason. Commissions would be subject to review and veto by one or two city council members. This brings up all sorts of scenarios ripe for misconduct, as described in the letter Dan and I sent you. It straitjackets commissions into being no more than rubber stamps, even though the commission handbook clearly states commissions should act independently of the city council. Further, it foments secret meetings behind closed doors, which is a clear violation of the Brown Act. A single city council member becomes a minder and shot caller of what a commission can and can't do. A council member who may be answerable only to special interest groups who donated to their campaign coffers and got them elected. This is not looking out for the best interest of the public, nor is it good governance. This is corruption at its worst. There was a robust discussion about this new plan at the recently formed Fiscal Commission, in which 4 critical points were made. 1, commissioners are experts in their field and may have different perspectives than the city council needs to hear, whether they want to or not. 2, if commissions want to take up innovative ideas, they ought to be able to. 3, commissions are supposed to be looking out for the public interest, not necessarily the interest of the city council. 4, it is not clear what problem this plan is trying to resolve. Since then, there has been an attempt to tweak this plan, as you've heard, to get around the Brown Act problem. The following sentence was added to the staff report, and I quote, "The commission would then decide whether to modify the proposal or whether to send the proposal to the full council for consideration," end quote. This is a Band-Aid approach which does nothing to squelch secret meetings behind closed doors. When asked their opinion about this new commission proposal, The Police Accountability Commission passed a motion to continue their practice of letting the chair and vice chair set the agenda. The Transportation Commission passed a motion for the council liaison to be completely removed from the decision-making process. The Senior Citizens Commission let their staff liaison know that its commission should be permitted to set its own agenda, and they're supposed to be advocating for seniors. This proposed plan should be scrapped as soon as possible. It is illegal and unworkable, and thoroughly disliked by the commissions asked to weigh in on the plan thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. I would love to see our council liaison at any meeting, but we've yet to see one, so that would be a point of contention as well. Do we want to do anything besides provide feedback?
No, I think I just wanted to add one more thing. I think if we, at least for my individual self, I think getting a confirmation about how they're thinking about HRMC in this process, so just the things that we brought up, citizens might come and say they want to, look into something, and I understand the staff time concern. So obviously, we're not necessarily saying that we would do things, beyond.
Are we talking specifically about the historic district?
Yeah, like the
question?
village
Okay.
home, so that particular question, or even the WPA markings, somebody who comes in and has done a lot of research on their own time.
There's different historic preservation efforts that
Exactly,
could go on in
yeah.
the city, and I think probably
Yeah,
participate.
so I think just, knowing how they've thought specifically about how HRMC might not fit into the normal flow chart, and just hearing that feedback would be helpful.
Any further feedback?
I just had a question of what the main complaints with the current process is, or is there no current process?
There's not a consistent process. I do believe this is very similar to what some commissions do now. There are other commissions, again, that are very application-driven. And we have some other commissions that were newly merged. And so some of their first initial meetings are really going to be about educating, on all of these big plans that have been adopted and these rates that are going to come in front of them. So some of those commissions are just kind of getting restarted. So we're not quite sure how that's going to play out. I do think that there are some commissions that have more defined roles and tasks than others, and so that's a little more clear-cut, and they know kind of what they're, like for instance, the Social Services Commission, they make recommendations on our funding for CDBG and home, they look at affordable housing plans. They have very defined tasks, so it's similar to what you do in that way. And there are other commissions that not as much. So I think maybe it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and maybe that's what we're learning going to the commissions with this proposal. But again, it's not consistent. And some commissions, they will go through the entire process to create a, you name it, policy recommendation, and it'll go to council. And so it's like at the end of the result that they go to council instead of at the beginning, which is what's being proposed now. So it really depends on which commission. Some don't check in with council very often because they have either defined tasks or it's very closely aligned with what staff, their work plan is. For instance, you have the Open Space and Habitat Commission that has some very defined tasks regarding the open space funds. So they have to review certain things annually, or they have to review it before we take too many steps to initiate complete analysis of a project before we look at, buying an easement, that sort of thing. So they have, again, very defined tasks. It's not consistent. So that's what I think we're struggling with.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, public comment. Appreciate it. Moving on to 7, you've lost half of your WPA marking subcommittee, Vice Chair Castaneda, so perhaps
We will be looking for somebody else.
we will
I
look
know.
for somebody else, yes. Do you have any updates you wanted to
No,
inform us on?
just
Okay.
I think we're gonna hopefully try to pick that up and follow up, just because I think we took a little bit of the summer off,
Okay.
but hopefully we can have an update by the next meeting.
Okay. I think certainly you could still talk to ex-Commissioner Lally.
Yes, yeah.
She could still come to the meetings if she wanted to report on anything y'all had discussed before,
Yeah.
so she's just not a formal part of the committee. All right, long-range calendar, are we gonna have a meeting in October? Do we have agenda items this far?
Nothing I'm aware of, so
Okay.
nothing's scheduled yet, so I will keep you informed on that in a couple of weeks or so.
Thank you, OS1, we met in August.
Yeah, and then can I ask for that one for potential agenda items, so for the WPA markings, committee, do we need to take a vote to replace the next person? The only reason I ask is because Commissioner Marino is interested, so I just wanted to
Oh,
mention if we can talk about that at the next meeting.
Sure, I don't see a problem if you wanted to reach out to him. Commissioner Bussey, do you want to? Do you have a problem with Commissioner Marino?
No.
Sounds great, okay. I think that would be fine. All right, anything else, anyone? Are we, yeah?
Backfilling positions, or are we waiting till the?
So I guess we have 5 appointed, we're 5, and so there are 5 of us. 3 is our quorum, so
Okay.
we're okay
Yeah.
until someone's term ends.
And I think the terms, maybe in 2020, June 2025, there's some terms that end.
Yes, mine was extended that 6 months, I saw. Supposed to be done in 2 months.
You counting the months, is that what you're saying?
I was looking at that and all of a sudden the month changed. Done my 2 terms here. Okay, anyway, nothing else, I'll adjourn, thank you. All right.
Yeah,